how you reached into our depths, you reached into our brokenness, and you walked us through. And we thank, Lord, every Christian in this room, how you literally rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of your dear Son. So we respond. I know it's small, but we respond the best we can together in singing praise. In Jesus' name. Amen. Let's stand and sing.
There's nothing worth more that will ever come close. Nothing can compare. You're our living hope. Your presence, Lord. I've tasted and seen of the sweetest of loves, where my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. In your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord. Your presence, Lord. There's nothing worth more that will ever come close. Nothing can compare. You're our living hope. Your presence, Lord. I've tasted and seen of the sweetest of loves, where my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. In your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord. Higher than the mountains that I face, stronger than the power of the grave, constant in the trial and the change. One thing remains, one thing remains. Your love, your love, your love. Higher than the mountains that I face, stronger than the power of the grave, constant in the trial and the change. One thing remains, one thing remains. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love. On and on and on and on it goes. It overwhelms and satisfies my soul. And I never ever have to be afraid, 'cause one thing remains. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love. In death, in life, I'm confident and covered by the power of your great love. My debt is paid, there's nothing that can separate my heart from your great love. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Oh, your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love, your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love, your love. 1,000 generations falling down in worship to sing the song of ages to the Lamb. and all who've gone before us, and all who will believe, will sing the song of ages to the Lamb. Your name is the highest, your name is the greatest, your name stands above them all. All thrones and dominions, all powers and positions, your name stands above them all. And the angels cry, holy, all creation cries, holy, you are lifted high, holy, holy forever. And if you've been forgiven, and if you've been redeemed, sing the song forever to the Lamb. If you walk in freedom, and if you bear His name, sing the song forever to the Lamb. We'll sing the song forever and amen, and the angels cry, holy, our creation cries, holy, you are lifted high, holy, holy forever. And the angels cry, holy, our creation cries, holy, you are lifted high, holy, holy forever. Your name is the highest, your name is the greatest, your name stands above them all. All thrones and dominions, all powers and position, your name, it stands above them all. Lord, your name is the highest, your name is the greatest, your name stands above them all. All thrones and dominions, all powers and positions, your name stands above them all. And the angels cry, holy, our creation cries, holy, you are lifted high, holy, holy forever. Hear your people sing, holy, to the King of Kings, holy, you will always be, holy, holy forever. You will always be holy, holy forever. Spirit of the living God, Spirit of the living God, we only want to hear your voice. We're hanging on every word. Spirit of the living God, Spirit of the living God. We want to know you more and more. We're hanging on every word. Come speak to us, Jesus, now. Spirit of the living God, Spirit of the living God, we only want to hear your voice. We're hanging on every word. Spirit of the living God, Spirit of the living God, we want to know you more and more. We're hanging on every word. 'Cause when you speak and when you move, when you do what only you can do, it changes us, it changes what we see and what we seek. When you come in the room, when you do what only you can do, it changes us, it changes what we see and what we see. You're changing everything. Spirit of the living God, Spirit of the living God, we're leaning into all you are. Everything else can wait. Spirit of the living God, Spirit of the living God, come now and breathe upon our hearts. Come now and have your way. 'Cause when you speak and when you move, when you do what only you can do, it changes us, it changes what we see and what we see. When you come in the room, when you do what only you can do, it changes us, it changes what we see and what we see. You're changing everything. When you move all our fears. When you move us to tears. And when you move all our fears. And when you move us to tears. And when you fall, we fall on our knees. And when you fall, we fall at your feet. And when you fall, we fall on our knees. And when you fall, we fall at your feet. It's when you speak and when you move, when you do what only you can do, it changes us, it changes what we seek and what we seek. When you come, when you do what only you can do, it changes us, it changes what we seek and what we seek. You're changing everything. The Spirit of the living God, Spirit of the living God, we only want to hear your voice. We're hanging on every word.
Amen. Our God is worthy. Amen. Are you excited to be at church tonight, y'all? Okay, well, that being said, we're kicking some of you out of here, okay? Hub, you'll go this way. Teenagers, looks like you're exiting in the back with Miss John.
As long as it's just for your church. There's a lot of people who want to use this against me at some point, especially after this week's announcement. Well, good evening. And what I'm talking about is the press release came out this week that I'm going to be nominated for SBC president in June. And that may mean nothing to you, and it just like it does to the rest of the world. But it's an honor, but right now it's a difficult challenge, and feel led to be in that race, and I may regret that by the end of the week. But I have a desire to lead us well as Southern Baptists, and I'm tired of all the fighting and the bickering, and don't get me preaching. I'm here for something else, But anyway, glad to be here with you. And I'm going to tell you, there's 3 reasons why I'm here, okay? And none of those involve the cooperative program, okay? And I'll give them to you in order. 1, I love the Lord Jesus. I do. I love him with all my heart. He changed my life. He took an old Elgin boy. Take it easy on me. He took an old Elgin boy and alcohol, drugs in my family, just a mess. And he used First Baptist Church in Elgin to rescue me. And they were the ones that knocked on our door and got me to church. Cookies and Kool-Aid, Vacation Bible School. And that's how I was first introduced to Jesus and godly people and people that showed me unconditional love. And eventually that leads later on to my salvation, call to ministry, all the things. And so so I'm here because Jesus saved my soul. And so I love the Lord. Second reason, I love your pastor. I love Cody Howard. And very special to me. We actually got to serve together at Southern Hills Baptist Church in Oklahoma City. And so from that point on, just love him. Love him and his family. The hand of God is on this guy. And you know, when I came to the First Baptist Lawton, I won't tell you the whole story in case any of our people are watching online, but no, I'm just kidding. They know this story. They lived it. There were 3 people on my search team that I knew had listed me as their number 2 guy. And that's half the committee. Had me as their number 2 guy. The other half had me as their number 1. I forced the chairman of that committee to tell me if I was his number 1 or number 2 because he hadn't told their committee yet, and I was his number 2, okay? And so, but they chose to meet with me first. And so we met, and they, you know, I sort of dry shaved them a little bit about, because I knew about that church. And I didn't want to go. And I thought if I was mean enough to this search team, they'd tell me no, and they would be disobedient, and I wouldn't, right? So that's kind of, you know, the way that I think subconsciously I was thinking in my head. And then they asked me, do you have any questions for us? And I said, I have one question. I said, I know that 3 of you don't think I'm the guy. I want to know who you are, and I want to know why. First guy that speaks up is a guy that hadn't talked much the whole night, a guy by the name of Bob Cox, who is a dear friend of mine now. And Bob Cox, and you may know Bob, and if you know Bob, you know that he doesn't mince words. And he said, Mike, he goes, I'm too old to be politically correct. And so I'm just going to tell you what it is and hope that you can handle it. And I said, okay, Bob, lay it on me. He said, all we've ever had in the 120-year history of First Baptist Lawton are white doctors as our pastors. And you're not either one of those. And he said, about 30 years ago, a man by the name of Dr. Roy Fish came and preached at our church and stood on our platform, and he said that First Baptist Lawton is a sleeping giant. He said for the last 29 years, or for 29 of the last 30 years, I believed that. He said, but about a year ago, I had just reconciled in my heart that this giant wasn't asleep. It was dead. And he got tears in his eyes, and he said, until tonight. And he said, I believe you're my pastor. I believe you're our pastor. and I'm ready to go to fight with you. And the whole search team erupted. I mean, like it was like somebody just scored the winning basketball goal, like the winning hoop, the winning basket in a game. And we had a big moment right there. And it was an amazing thing because what he understood and what I understood is that not only was I not a white, which I can't change, and I wasn't a doctor, probably the least educated pastor they've ever had when it comes to that kind of thing academically. But they saw the heart I had for the Lord, and they saw the heart that I had for that church. And so I became the pastor. And the reason why I tell you that is I know who your pastors have been. Now, Cody's still white, so that's good. And I don't think he's planning on changing that anytime soon. But I know there have been great men that have pastored this church. And one thing I do know is they've all loved the Lord. They've all been good, godly men. Some of those guys have shaped my life. I think of Mike Tompkins as one of those that I'm here today because of investment from men like him in my life. And Cody's not like all those other guys. But he's the man God has sent you. And he is a godly man that loves Jesus. And I'm going to tell you something, he loves you. And I know he tells you that, but it's different when an outsider who's heard him say it, who's heard those words come out of his mouth, and I've known Cody long enough to know whether he means it or not, and he didn't have any reason to tell me that he loves you. But he loves you. And so for us to gather like this, I know I was sitting awkwardly looking at you while you were singing, and that was on purpose. So at my church on Sunday morning, I get to a place where I can sit and I can see the crowd while they're singing because that tells me what kind of Sunday I'm going to have. I can tell by the way people worship whether they've spent time with the Lord, whether they're ready to hear from God, or whether they're just ready to sit, soak, and sour. I can see it. I can see it sets the tone. And so I wanted to know because I don't know you. I don't know you. I wanted to know what I was walking into here. And I'll give you an analysis later if you want it, but it's kind of a mixed bag. But no, I love it. I love the way you worship. It was a sweet time, and it really prepared my heart for what we want to do tonight. And so what I wanted to do, I want to do it a little bit different. I know that maybe you're expecting me to come in with a little bit of a speech or a prepared program or something like that. And what I want to do is I want to start out with questions. I have an understanding of kind of where you're at in the process of trying to figure out what you're trying to do as a church, and you're praying through that. And I want to commend you for that. And so if you're okay with that, Cody, and if you guys are okay, I'd like to start, because I don't want to give you a bunch of information that you don't care about or that you don't want to know. I would like to spend our time wisely in addressing the things that you just want to know, that you need to know. And if I can't answer it, I'll pass it on to somebody else who can, but I'll do my best and to do that. But to get ready, I called your financial secretary and I said, could you send me a list of your regular tithers? And so I'm just kidding, I didn't do that. But let me put that in perspective, okay? So let me give you what the national average is, okay? And I didn't do that, just so you know, I didn't do that. But the national average says that out of a congregation, typical Southern Baptist congregation, about 18 to 20% of that regular attending membership pays 100% of the bills, meaning that about 80% or more are not contributing. And and what I mean by that means they're not regular tithers, and certainly not regular 10% tithers, okay? Most will give us something here and there, put something in the plate, give to a special thing here and there, but they're not regular tithers. Now, I'm going to tell you something, and you may not like me after this and may not want to listen to me after this, but this is how I function at my church, and this is how I function at the last church that I was at, is anytime anybody wanted to talk to me about the budget, okay, the first question I would ask them, and because typically when somebody wants to talk to you about the budget, there's a couple of ways they want to do that. Like, hey, could we visit about the budget? And then I need to talk to you about the budget. Okay, like that's two different tones. You know what I mean? And so when it was a tone that I knew was bad, the first question I would ask before I would set up that meeting is, are you a regular tither? And Whether you tell me yes or not, I'm going to check. But I'm going to let you tell me right now, are you a regular tither? And a lot of times they would say, well, you can't ask me that. And I was like, no, I can. I just did. But let me tell you why I'm asking that of you. Because if you're not a regular tither, then you have no reason to talk to me about somebody else's budget. Because this ain't your budget. And so for you to gripe and complain how we spend somebody else's money doesn't make any sense. And so either start tithing, and I'll, maybe give me 8 months of that, and then you can come back and talk to me. No, I'll make it a year, right? Because I really don't want to talk to you. That was all. I said it all on the inside. I didn't say that on the outside. But I think that's important to note, that if you're going to have ownership of a budget, you ought to be contributing to the budget. And I know not everybody can tithe 10% right off the bat, but I would encourage you, if you're not tithing, to start tithing something and work your way to what I believe is a biblical tithe of 10%, okay? And that's above like gifts and offerings and things like that. And I'm not going to preach that sermon tonight, but I believe that convictionally. I do. And I've seen that when a church does that, God honors that, and he honors their finances. And so that's a beautiful thing. So I'm going to start that from the bat. So now I've made friends and I've lost a few, but it doesn't mean that I don't love you still. Because I really do have a love in my heart for this church, not just because of the men who served here, but I've had the opportunity to preach in different ways through youth ministry things and through ministries that you do at the school and that kind of stuff. And so I have a heart for this church and for what God is doing in your life and in your ministry. I hear about what God's doing here in lots of different places, and a lot of folks bragging about you. And there's some church even scared of you, because things are going so good here. And so anyway, so let's start out with just some questions, and I'll try to work through those, as many as I can. And I did ask for permission to bring my Sonic drink in. I don't know if that's bad here, but if you're mad at me, I'll point out the two guys that let me in with it, okay? All right. So what's our first question? All right, let's go home. Yes, sir.
We know what the Bible says about tithing, 10%, and I agree with that 100%. How does that correlate with the cooperative program? Because I don't know that the Bible talks about the cooperative program. So how is it that, and everybody comes up with a different percentage, our percentage is different than a bunch of other people. So how do you, come up with what you feel like is the appropriate amount?
That is a great question, and it might answer a bunch of questions by the time I get to the end of this deal, so buckle up. So first of all, I think it's important to understand how the cooperative program even got started, okay? So we're going to go all the way back to the mid-early 1800s, okay? And so back in those times, churches didn't have budgets. They didn't. How do you think they took care of business as far as money goes? They just passed a hat, passed a plate, things had to be paid here and there. They wanted to take care of their pastor a little bit. They wanted to, they had things that they wanted to pay for. And so they just took up a collection, okay? And so as that was the habit, you've got the Southern Baptist Convention that forms, right? And it's just a convention of churches, and they have their little annual meetings, and they do have their mission boards. Remember the old mission boards and things like that? They had all these things, but the entities that were created would all come and visit the churches at different times. And so you may have like if we were just using it today, we have the children home, you have OBU, you have different school, any kind of entity that was a part of their convention would schedule appointments, and they would take up a special offering at each of those places. Well, then you take a church, let's say First Baptist Fletcher, right? So one of those groups comes in, they have a special offering that Sunday, man, you feel really moved and compelled to help that. So you give a good chunk to that. Well, then the very next Sunday, the next group comes in. And you're like, oh man, well, I kind of gave a lot to that first one. And so let me give, I can give a little bit here, but I can't give as much. And then pretty soon, if you were the last one to come through, you either got nothing or you got just a little bit. And it wasn't because those people weren't generous. It's because they were generous. They'd given what they could give. And so about 1880, somewhere in there was a church. I can't tell you the name of the church, but you could probably find it if you wanted to. But there was a church that started a budget. I said, hey, let's take this money that we're collecting from our folks and let's figure out how we're going to spend it, and let's work on a budget. And then somebody got the idea of, you know what, why don't all the churches do that? And then they take a little bit of their budget, and then we can help all these, mission boards and all these things that we're trying to do together. Because we're trying to, Southern Baptists have been sending missionaries all over the world for a long time. And so everybody wants to help with that. And so that's kind of how that got generated and started. And so the percentages on those just kind of were created. It certainly wasn't a biblical thing. It was just something that was practical for that church in that time and that season, okay? Well, then as Southern Baptists progressed, right, and as man began to put their hands on something really awesome, right, the cooperative program sort of became a way that churches created clout and influence. They were still using it for very great things, but it became a trophy, basically, of, hey, I give this percent, or I give this percent, and all the good was happening still because of it, but you have churches that are just, almost trying to outdo each other. Not saying that every church was that way, but there were certainly some of that. And there were certainly instances across the convention where, when they're picking somebody to be the chairman of this committee or chairman of that committee or to be in this position or that position, so what do you give to the cooperative program, And like, I give 5%. Oh, are you sure? You sure it's not 7 or 8? Yeah, as a matter of fact, Now, I don't know if that's exactly how it happened, but you begin to see how that influence kind of can affect things. And so, but the easy answer is that the historical practice was just to try to collect money to do good things. And then somebody sort of started organizing it and put a plan to it, but there was never any secret formula for what a church should do. And so I think you get into some dangerous ground if you try to put biblical grounds on a specific number that your church ought to do. And I'll just give you this is what our church walked through, when I came to First Baptist Lawton. So when I got there, we were giving like 8%. And before that, they were at 10%, I think, at some point. And so, but when I got there, we did not have a line item in our whole budget for missions at all, period. I was like, that's a problem, right? I mean, that's part of our DNA. And here's what I told the church when I came there. I said, I looked at your constitution and bylaws because that's your brain. That's how church functions. I looked at your budget because that's your church's heart, right? I mean, there's some great biblical preaching on that. And so when I see there's no mission line item, that's a problem. That's a heart condition, right? And so we were also very understaffed. My first Sunday there, we had 12 children in our children's ministry that day. It's First Baptist Lawton, okay? My first Sunday preaching, there was 115 people in the sanctuary, okay? And so with that being where we were, coming right out of COVID, there were some financial issues. There was a lot of things going on. We were understaffed. And it's kind of one of those things like, well, we need to have more people coming so we can get more money, and then we can then hire the staff, And so in praying through that, what we made the decision to do was to move from 8% to 6%. And then we moved that 2% and used that to fuel our missions budget, and then to also be able to hire staff and to be able to, have a show. So by doing that, now we're running over 100 kids on Sunday mornings. And so that was a worthwhile investment to be able to hire that kind of staff person that could do what they do and watch the Lord just bless that. And we were able to, get our staff that were there, that had been through some hard times, we were able to get them where they needed to be financial. They had taken hits on their salary and all those things, and they had survived the hard stuff, but almost like they got penalized for staying, and we didn't want to do that. And so we just used that to make it right. At some point, we're going to start going the other way. At some point, we're going to start adding that percentage and getting it to where we think it ought to be as a church. And I think, the goal for us is getting it back to 8%. But, we had to do something. And so now we're on the verge of that for the first time as far as anybody in my church can remember, how you keep track of the budget, where you're at percentage-wise throughout the year. For the first time in a long, long time, we were over 100% in where we're at in our budget. And so, in our income budget. So, God is blessing that. So now our eyes turn to, okay, now how can we get back to doing what we feel like we're supposed to do as a church? Now, to give you some perspective, the national average for Southern Baptist churches in the cooperative program is 4.59%. That's the average, okay? You're really celebrated if you give anything above, that. The other guy that's running for, I better not say this online, but there is a church, all right? And, and there are some churches that give, as little as 2% to the cooperative program. And so you've got people that are all over the place. But I say all of that to say this, is that it really needs to be kind of what you guys are doing right now. Not kind of, but does need to be what you're doing now. And that is going through a season of prayer, praying through what God is doing in the life of your church, where God is leading you, and then settling on a place that you're willing to do together as a family. And you want to do that in unity, and you want to do that because there's strength in unity, and it honors God when it's done in unity. And so, does that answer your question a little bit? Okay, but I don't think there is a biblical deal. And I'll share this. This is on my heart. The Lord put this on my heart. Is in Isaiah 43. It starts in verse 18, and it says this. It says, "Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I'm doing a new thing, and now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" And so what it's in response to is God is speaking to his people, and they've just gone through a bunch of ups and downs and all the way around, and now he's moving them back to repentance. And the people don't know what to do. They don't know what season this is. And God has to stop them and tell them, hey, take a breath. I'm doing something new. Don't get caught up on what's behind you. Don't get caught up on all the things in the past. Don't get caught up. I'm doing something new with you. Don't you see it? Don't you see it? I don't know a lot about First Baptist Fletcher's history, but I know there's a new thing happening right now. God's doing a new work. And so don't get caught up in the weeds of these kinds of things and let it split your unity, because man, God's doing some work here, man, and it's awesome. And I think some folks are even jealous of it, and that makes me happy. And so anyway, next question. Sorry, I kind of parked on that a little bit. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yep. Hmm? Yep. Yep. Oh, absolutely. And to be clear, and to be clear, what I was saying is no percentage comes from the scriptures. Yeah. But I agree 100%. 100%. And I love what it says in chapter 8, where he says, "Now finish the work so that your eager willingness to do it may be matched by your completion of it according to your means." And so he was telling them, look at your situation and do what you can do and contribute what you can contribute. For if the willingness is there, the gift is acceptable according to what one has, not according to what he does not have. And so I think that's good wisdom for the church when you're walking through something like this. But the cooperative program is incredible. Let me just tell you, how awesome this is. So one of the things I love, and you have to understand, when I got the first Lawton, there was the big stuff going on. I don't know if you pay attention to Baptist life or not. I don't recommend it. And I mean that by looking on the internet and YouTube, okay? That's like looking to, check your symptoms. Everything's cancer and, all that. And so, so there was a big to-do that came up about how NAM spends their money. And there kind of was like this like tinfoil conspiracy stuff going on. And I love a good conspiracy theory, and I bought in, okay? I got into the deep well of that. And so I was ready to pull. Like I was ready to okay, I don't want to give to this, like I was ready to lead our church through all this. And then the Lord just in a crazy way got me involved in the middle of it by calling me to be a part of the executive committee. 3 years ago, I didn't know what the executive committee was. And I signed up for something I had no idea I was signing up for. I just felt the Lord leading me to do it, and it throws me right into the middle of all of that. And so the blessing of that is that I got to actually see what happens with this money when it leaves the church and goes and jumps into the cooperative program. And it was beautiful. And so now there's no way. I came back to my church because I talked to some of my leaders about the possibility. And I was like, guys, I was wrong. And I started, having a front seat to where these things come from, why people are saying certain things. And in my heart, I'm like, well, why don't y'all just advertise that? Why don't y'all just tell that, And they didn't give a good reason why, but they didn't. And but it's things like this, okay? And I would encourage you, and I'm not telling you this just because I'm being nominated in June, but if you can take a group to the annual meeting, and this year it's in Indianapolis, you need to go or you need to send somebody, whether it's your pastor or a team of people. Every church in the Southern Baptist Convention gets 10 messengers. And if you give a certain amount, I think you get another extra one or two, which I think is ridiculous. But you get 10 messengers that vote on everything. Take as many as you want, but you got 10 that register as voters. But one of the things that you'll see and hear are all the things that happens because of the cooperative program. These guys like Paul Chitwood, Kevin Ezell. Paul Chitwood is over IMB. Kevin Ezell is a part of NAM. And they give reports. You can see their budget. It's amazing the information that you get. And you get to vote on it as Southern Baptists. And you get to ask questions from the floor at those meetings. So if there's something that you don't like, you have a question about, you can put, and I've seen this the last 3 years, people have put Kevin Ezell on the spot like crazy. But the amazing thing is he always has an answer. There's always a reason for this, or and it's logical, makes sense, and it's good. And so that kind of stuff gets cleared up, and then you never hear about that, right? You never hear about the resolution. You just hear about the things. So getting the front seat to all that, here's some things that you might have missed. Last year, because of the cooperative program and through the work of IMB, there were 176,000 people saved outside of the United States. Amen. And listen, here's the crazy part. You help do that. You help do that. There may be people you get to meet in heaven someday. And I don't know if they'll want to talk about the cooperative program. They may not care. But you may meet them, and it's because they heard the gospel. That's what convinced me to stay is, whether these guys are, doing good or bad, I don't know. But what I do know is that there are missionaries all over the world that are godly people. They've sacrificed their families. They sacrificed, all the things that we have here to go share the gospel. And listen, some of those in some of the most dangerous places in the world. And the gospel's being presented. 176,000 were saved. 107 of those were baptized. And then, I love this too, 22,000 new churches were started across the world. 22,000 new churches. A lot of those new believers in places that didn't have churches decided they needed church. And so that's pretty amazing. And then here was this statistic that we heard. 157,000 plus daily dies across the world separated from God. And so it's like we celebrate this over here, but at the same time, there's a lot of people getting missed. Now, I know from the scriptures that everybody has an opportunity for salvation. Nobody dies without. God is just, and he reconciles that, and we can start getting into theology if you want to, but you probably don't want to. But what we know is there are lost people that die, and we're trying to save as many as possible. And so we get to do that by partnering with the cooperative program. And so the world population, about 8 billion right now, and it probably just changed in the last 5 minutes. And right now, we have 3,500 missionaries. And so cooperative program helps recruit, train, and take those who are called. And honest truth is that in 1979, we had 3,000 missionaries across the planet. We've only increased 500 since then. And so, one, we've got to get that call out there to let, to call, ask, when we're in our preaching and our teaching, who's God calling out to go to those places, and then how do we get them ready? And so that's what your cooperative dollars do. So anyway, those are some cool things that happens. As far as the state goes, when you send your cooperative program dollars to the state of Oklahoma, 42% of that, or 43% of that goes to Nashville, 42% stays home, and they break that, and there's different percentages that go here and there across the state. I think I heard somebody mention somewhere about OBU, Oklahoma Baptist University. They get 10% of what comes in there, and I know you're thinking, but why are they so expensive, right? And so let me give you a couple of things. Let me give you some good news. Okay, one is that OBU does not have an endowment. Okay, and if they do have one, it's not very good. It's very minimal, very low. So they don't get to subsidize. So like if you got Harvard, Yale, any other private school, they have big endowments where they can do scholarships, they can do certain things, and they can lower the price of tuition there. They typically don't do that at Ivy Leagues, but in other private schools, that's kind of how that works. OBU is 100% tuition driven, and so it's based on their enrollment. And so, you go back to back in the 1900s, that sounds crazy. You go back into the late 1900s, they were graduating 2,500, 3,000, close to 3,000 students. And now on campus today is about 1,200 students. And so they still have to pay the bills. They still have to, and so they're not, they're trying to regulate it the best they can, but they've got to get more students to help with that. Okay. So now here's the good news. Okay, and understand what OBU does better than ever is they are taking our teenagers and across, mostly from the state of Oklahoma, and they're giving them a godly, mission-centered education. And so we've made a concerted effort at our church to try to recruit our kids to go to OBU. And what we found is that OBU does have a lot of ways of trying to help get scholarships and help pay their way, and they really do a good job of not letting finances be a reason why somebody can't come. And we see them working at that. And then our church does a matching scholarship that helps through the association, things like that, which you may not know about. If you have a child that is going to go to OBU, if the church gives $500, the association will match that. And so, those kinds of things. I may be off on the numbers a little bit, but they do. There's a matching scholarship available to you. And then here's something that's really cool that just happened this year. So there's something you might have heard of called Oklahoma Promise. Has anybody ever heard of that? Okay. Well, OBU accepts Oklahoma Promise now. And so if your combined income is, and this is the average gross income, I think is what it is. If that is $60,000 or less, you can go to OBU tuition free. How crazy is that? And OBU calls it the Bison Pact. And so what that means is I think the cap limit on like combined salaries is like $100,000. But if you do just your average gross income and it's less than 60, you're in and can do that. So you're just, you're paying a lot. It's a lot less expensive. And so that just launched this year. And so if you know somebody that fits that, that's, I've got a niece that that's going to help her out. She's going to be able to go to OBU when she graduates high school because of that. And so that makes it super affordable. And so when you look at the number of graduates from OBU who have gone out to pastor and do all those things, golly, it's spectacular. So Oklahoma Baptist are doing a great thing at OBU. And I didn't graduate from OBU, so I didn't, that's not my school. But I love what it's doing, and we're trying our best to send kids there. And especially now through the Oklahoma Promise and Bison Pack, that's a huge, huge opportunity to do that. So, and then on the state level, when you're giving the cooperative program, you're also helping ministries like Send Relief. Send Relief is incredible. In fact, Oklahoma's Send Relief, and I'm a little partial, I think is the best in the country. But what I do know is that now Send Relief is the preferred first call for most natural disaster areas, okay? And even in some cases, we're even being called before Red Cross is because of how well we do it, how well we're trained. Listen, and everybody on Send Relief, or most everybody on Send Relief, are volunteers. You could take Send Relief training and be mobilized, and they'll teach you all the skills you need. A disaster hits, you get a phone call, you hit the road and go. And so part of our cooperative program has helped with those kinds of things through there. And so there's a lot that we do. The Baptist building, they do a lot to help churches. There's a lot of resources there. I would encourage you to do as much homework and snoop around that as much, and they're willing to help. All kinds of trainings, they do incredible. One of the things I loved was they have a school called Hoskins School of Ministry. And so when I was at Cherokee Hills, I had several guys, adult guys that were already in their careers and their jobs, but they felt a call to ministry. But they, didn't want to drop their job and go to seminary or something like that. And so Robert Haskins School of Ministry is basically like Ministry Votech. And so they take this class, they can do it 100% online or partly online, partly here, and they teach you the basics of ministry. They teach you how to prepare a sermon. They teach you how to do hospital visits. My guys, they got to practice baptizing people. And so we'd fill up the baptistry, and we'd all pretend to be, newly saved and let them dunk us. And some of them didn't start off so good. But so there's things like that are really, really awesome. And then, of course, you're obviously given to things that help Falls Creek be Falls Creek and do what Falls Creek does. And I think everybody has great testimonies about it. But it's also Cross Timbers and all the other, camps and things that we do and that kind of stuff. And so you're doing a lot with it. And so, all those dollars are reaching, in lots of really good places. So, all right, I'll shut up about that. Next question. Yeah. And the way that I worded it was intentional because not the Send or the disaster relief, but what Send Relief does now primarily is run off of donations. And so there was a time when we were funding that mostly, but now they take private donations from all over the world, which is another example of their impact that people want to give to that, So, and it's amazing the people they get gifts from, people you'd never suspect, do they know we're Baptist? But hey, they know we're there for them, right? So pretty cool. What else?
All the time, on the news about you give to people and turn out it's a scam, and they, we all put them in the notions of gold faucets and stuff, and some administrators' offices are telling us.
Mm-hmm.
So what percentage of the money that we give, like if I give you $1, what percentage of that dollar goes to ministry and what goes to administrator?
There's a great, let me see if I can pull it up here. But and what I did was I just Googled average CP percentage. And so I found this book of reports, and you can go through, and at every annual meeting, they do a book of reports for the convention. And you can get into all the weeds, and you can find out all those. I don't want to lie to you because I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but we could find it. But I'll tell you that it's minimal, and what they're doing with that small amount, that sliver, is they're running a sleek operation that helps train the missionaries that we send out. And they do that for the IMB, they do that for NAM. And so they do a good job of spending their money. And in fact, and one of the things the rabbit hole I chased, right, was, I noticed like anytime I went to a pastor's conference or something like that, like we'd get really nice stuff. They give us backpacks and water bottles and, Stanley cups and, like, whoa, like, man, my cooperative dollar's at work, right? But it turns out that there are people that donate to do those things to try to help them raise money for missions. And so they're not like going out and just like spending our money like crazy to do those kind of things, but they're using their money really wisely, and people are donating things for that to help it be more attractive to be able to give and have those opportunities. And so they really do a good job of doing that. And the good thing is that you can, like I said, go to those book of reports, that's what it's called, for every year, and kind of see where all that goes and what it does. That's a good question.
I got another one.
Yes, sir.
Back to me, because I did read some of the stuff on the internet, and one of the things that they were questioning was how NAM was spending some of their money, and that I don't know who wanted to do an outside audit of NAM, and NAM said no. Am I kind of correct?
Well, yes, and no. Every entity has a third-party audit. And so what they were saying no to was an extra audit on top of that. So that third-party audit is, so they don't let IMB, let their own accountants do an audit. They pay for an outside third party to come in and look at everything and check everything. And so what they were saying was, it's not necessary. And you can look at this audit. You can have it. Well, it's, and that's what I found out, is that there's conveniently left out information because that doesn't feed the narrative. And so, you know how it is. If you've ever been an administrator in anything or in an organization like that, people will twist things to try to get what they're trying to accomplish. And even when you present them with those things, they don't go back and go, oh, you know what, I was wrong. They just kind of let it sit out there and try to affect good people. But I was the same way. I was alarmed at that. But yeah, and I was on the finance team for the SBC, for the executive committee. And so we got to hear the audit reports from every entity and see them and go through them with. So that's which is another great, thing, because all of us, on the EC none of us are paid. It's all volunteer. The only thing they pay for is our trip there and back. And that's really in a hotel room to stay in while we're there. But what we're looking at when we were on the finance team was those very things, and got to hear from them and ask questions, that kind of stuff. But we're all lay people. Not all of them pastors, ministers. Some are, teachers. Some are lawyers. Some are doctors. Some whatever. They're whoever your state sends. We have 4 from our state, and I think I'm the only pastor. No, there's 2 of us that are pastors now. One is an admin at a church. And the other one is a doctor around Skytook, Claremore area. And so we're, asking questions just like you would, in those moments. But yeah, they do a really good job with their audits. And everyone has to do it. Yes, sir. Not off the top of my head, but they're not, but they're firms. I couldn't tell you, at least not off the top of my head. I could find out, that'd be easy, but I don't. But not Guidepost Solutions, that's for sure. So, some of y'all get that, some of y'all won't.
Another question I have, this stuff you're talking about, IMB and NAM, we've been told a whole lot about the negative part of it, and that's been part of the basis of why people are wanting to make adjustments. Now, do they do good work? Are they ministers we should be supporting, or do we not need to support them?
I wouldn't support it if I didn't believe in it. I wouldn't, right now, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, they were in Ecuador. And I saw how those dollars were helping them not just survive, but to be able to do ministry that was thriving. And so they had to be called home from the mission field because of they didn't have the right medical attention for their family. And so they had to come home. But in the time that they were there, I saw it working firsthand. And then we get to see that. We launched a new church in Lawton a few months ago called Hope Church. And that was through the work of the North American Mission Board. And so we were to help launch them, and they were to help fund that. And man, it's awesome. And so one of the things that they do through NAM that I think is really cool is they will take a church plant like that and for the first year pay for their church accounting to be done. They'll pay for, they'll take care of the insurance for that pastor for I think a year to help, while the church gets on its feet and things like that. So there's a lot of really good things that are happening. A lot of churches being planted across the country, and so it's amazing to see what it does. And that's why I encourage you again, go to that annual meeting. I know it's expensive, it's a cost, but if you have people that do, they can go learn, see, and they can bring it back and say, hey, let me tell you, this is what I learned. This is what I saw. And every one of those entities has to give a report at the annual meeting. And so they walk through, here's where we spent our money, here's what we did, here's what it accomplished, and you get to see it. And so just kind of put things in perspective, we have 14 million Southern Baptists. So you have 14 million brothers and sisters out there, okay, representing about 50,000 plus churches, okay? And so every one of those 50,000 churches can send 10 members to the annual meeting. Last year, I think we had 15,000 at that meeting. So you can do some math. If we got any mathematicians in here, what do you think that percentage is of Southern Baptists that showed up at that meeting? Huh? 0.5%. So think about that for a second. So 0.5% are making 100% of the decisions. And if you're not there, you have no input. And yet you're giving, So to me, it's a worthwhile investment to get people there so that you can see. And if you can make it in Indianapolis, the next year it's in Dallas. And so, but I would, this year there are two significant things going on at this convention regarding sexual abuse and what's called the law amendment. And those are going to be big deals in our convention. So I would encourage you, if you can go, you need to be there to learn. The law amendment deals with the role of women in ministry. And then the abuse reform, which I'm on that task force, is, what are we going to do moving forward about reform? And we've got something that I can't tell you about that we're going to bring forward and announce. But it's a big deal, and it's a good thing, but there'll be a fight, I'm sure. And so to be there, be a part of things like that is huge, and just to learn about what's going on with your convention. Because I think the more you know, the more you'll be glad that you're a part of it. That's what happened to me. That's my testimony on it. That's why I was glad to be here tonight for this. They really don't. Yes, and certainly if they do, they're not near the level of where we're at. Nobody does it better than Southern Baptists, and I mean not just in the amount that we're able to raise together, because we're the largest evangelical denomination in the world, and it's not even close. And so we have the opportunity to be that way, but none are as well organized as we are either. And have the accountability that we have set up compared to everybody else. And so, it's good. Yes, ma'am.
We're into the meeting for a long time, but what is IMB and what is NAM?
Okay, I should have answered that at the beginning. So IMB is our International Mission Board, and so they handle everything overseas, missions-wise. And so that's, they're leading people to the gospel. Those missionaries are out there on the field leading people to Jesus. That's the 176,000 people that were led to the Lord by IMB missionaries, Southern Baptist missionaries. And then NAM is the North American Mission Board. And so they're dealing with lostness right here in the United States. And so to understand the problem with that, I want to make sure I get this right. And I'm going to ask you this question, and if you guys know this. So in the last year, how many baptisms have you guys had? Give me a rough 20? Yeah? No, for the country. No. I want to tell you, I'm going to tell you where you stack up against the United States of America and those 50,000 Southern Baptist churches. It's going to blow your mind, okay? Last year, 47% of Southern Baptist churches did not baptize one person. didn't even turn on the water in their baptistry, saved a lot of money on their water bill. Did not baptize a soul. Okay, it gets better or worse. 57.1%. So wherever our mathematicians are, you can tell me what 57.1% of 50,000 is. Okay, anybody? About 22,000, what is it? Okay, so think about, so put in that perspective, somewhere between 25 and 30,000 baptized one or less. So if you baptized 20 people this last year, you're in the upper echelon of Southern Baptist churches in the country. So you don't ever have to say, well, for Fletcher, okay, you're big dogs. Okay? You're big dogs. And that's big time. Man, that's the number that you ought to worry about, you know. And so you're doing some crazy good things when you're seeing people saved. And so yeah, that's pretty awesome. And so the North American Mission Board is that they're trying to figure this out, and they're trying to, you know, they're starting new churches because you're dealing with generations that church, the way that has traditionally been done, is not reaching them. And so they're trying to create these other churches and new kinds of churches without sacrificing who we are, what we believe, but appeals to that generation. Because what did we do? We tried to change churches and it fractured them. Right? Or we you know, people came into the church and they were way different and they got treated way bad. And so then they were like, I don't want anything to do with church ever, right? So you have that whole deconstruction thing that we're dealing with right now where people are walking away because of the way they were treated at church. And so NAM is starting these gospel-centered churches that just do things different, you know? They just do things different, and it's effective where they're at. And they're able to concentrate on regional things. So you go to Portland, Oregon, and have church, it's going to be way different than how you're having church here. And the congregation's going to look even way more different, you know. Yeah, I got to be careful what I say because this is online. So I was going to try to one-up you a little bit, but I better leave it. What else? And I'm yours tonight. I still got about half of this left, so we can go for whatever. It's up to you. Yes, sir.
I'm fairly new to this church,
Yeah.
and moreover, I'm fairly new to being under the SBC and part of the First Baptist churches. I grew up in an independent Baptist church, which doctrinally means nothing, but financially means we just were supported by ourselves. Missions was on top of tithe, so all the missions were supported
Yes, sir.
in-house locally by our church. So when I came into the First Baptist church and under the SBC, it was kind of a culture shock and a lot of just new things coming at me. And I've kind of tended to see some of these churches begin to almost view the SBC and a lot of the programs as kind of the end-all be-all, or these main entities that we should just kind of follow. As a local church in a small town, how can we be obedient to God and be a biblical church while also supporting the great things that the SBC does and all the many programs that are under that are doing?
Okay. So I'm going to overstep my bounds. And that's because I get to go home and you can't leave my church because you're not there. And you're in a great church already. I've thought about you guys a lot ever since the invitation. In fact, I asked for a copy of your budget. I could go through your budget and look at what you're doing, where you're spending your money, and those kind of things. Are you nervous, Cody? Just pat his back, Tony. Pat his back a little bit. Just rub his back a little bit. And the one question that I couldn't get away from, and listen, you can do with this whatever you want. You can throw it right in the trash, okay? But I was, the question that I couldn't get away from is, what would I do? What would I do if I was in your situation, if I was trying to lead this church? What would I do? And what would I suggest? And I promise you, God is my witness, I have not had a single conversation with Cody since my invitation. And I don't know if he intentionally did that, but I was intentional about not doing that myself. And so So this is 100% me as I've just thought about you for the last week and a half or so, 2 weeks or more. Right now you give 20% of your budget, which is unbelievable. And I mean, like, when I say unbelievable, I'm not criticizing you. I'm telling you that's incredible. Like, wow. And when I've talked to other churches about you, I talked to Bart Barber, who's the current president of our Southern Baptist Convention, and he's like, wow, I used to be proud of what we gave. His church in Farmersville, Texas, gives 12%, and that's that's elite. And so I don't know how you don't have like giant trophies around here from the convention for that kind of stuff, because that is that's a sacrificial giving is what it is. And so if I were here, and if I were the one pushing buttons and going to be the guy making people mad, I would cut that in half. And don't say amen, that'll make people mad. But what I would do is I would cut that in half and take care of my immediate needs. Okay? And I'm looking through here, and listen, what you got to think is like, and this is what I challenge my church to be. I can't just think about who we are today as First Baptist Lawton. I have to think 100 years from now, when somebody else is the pastor, when somebody else is going to inherit what we're giving them. What are we going to give them? What are we going to give them? Are they going to be at a staff meeting and go, golly, they made this so hard on us? Or are they going to be like, man, I'm so thankful for that church back in 2023. They really set us up. They really set us up for success, right? And so, and this is what I told my church because we had to walk through this to move from 8 to 6. I said, listen, and I said, within 3 years, at 6%, we're going to be giving more than what we are giving at 8% right now, because we have planted the seed to grow, to get more people here. And so our 6% right now is significantly better than the 8% in 2020. Does that make sense? And it was because we invested in a children's minister. Listen, I'm going to tell you something, and I've thought way too much about you at the neglect of my own church the last 2 weeks, okay? Because I believe in you. I do. You've got to look at what's happening around you, okay? And I predicted this when I came to Lawton, and I'm starting to see it bud now. You've got Lawton, and I love Lawton, and I want to see Lawton thrive and grow. That's not where people want to be. It's not. They're there because they have to be, because of Fort Sill or whatever company moves them there or whatever. That's not where people want to be. It's where they have to be. Now I'm praying that it changes to be a place where people want to be. People want to be in Cache. People want to be in Elgin, okay? And so here's the question. You got a neighbor that has run out of room. They got a 2-lane highway where there needs to be like 6. Okay? And so there's one place that they can go. And, well, there's 2. There's Apache and there's here. And you have way more in your favor. And I'm not hating against Apache. I don't have anything against them. I'm sure they're great people. But what you have here is the next big boom. That's my prediction. And I've been watching your numbers. I've been watching the people moving here. I've been watching your school, because I'm watching because it means something to me too. And you guys, you're starting to have some new businesses starting to open up. It's becoming this place where people want to see and want to be a part of. And man, you've got some things when you look at the state and what the state's going to do as far as like, highways and things like that. Like, I don't know if it's going to happen in your lifetime, but things are coming. I just think that this is the next, and this is my opinion based on what I'm seeing. So don't bank everything on this, okay? Don't like, all right, we're going for the lottery. Be praying about it. But what I've seen in just you listening to me say those things, what I see in your faces are, yeah, that's kind of happening. It's kind of happening. And I don't think it's going to quit. I think it's, Elgin's landlocked, and people still want to be close to there, right? And then this is going to grow, and then people are going to start investing in this community even more, and then I just think this is going to be the next place. And so you got to be ready for that. You got to facilitate growth before it happens. You don't want to be caught up catching up, right? And because here's what I know will happen. Well, I can't say that. Here's what I think strongly will happen. If First Baptist Fletcher doesn't seize that moment, another church will. Okay? I saw this happen in Elgin. First Baptist, and I'm really going to get in trouble if this gets out past this internet here, so pray for me. But First Baptist Marlow saw that Elgin was booming. They saw First Elgin fold, turn into something else. And so they planted a church called Connection Church. And that Connection Church, I think, within 10 years, is going to be the largest church in Elgin. They're getting ready to open up a new building here pretty soon. It's really nice. And they've got the backing of a really good church and some good leadership. And so they're going to seize that. If they see what I'm seeing here, and I'm not saying Marlowe will do it, I'm just saying somebody. If you don't do it, somebody's going to. But my opinion is that if you're doing it, they're going to stay out. And so, and the other thing is if you were to cut your percentage in half, go 10%, take care of your ministries, take care of your staff that you have currently, dream a little bit with some of that, grow in areas you need to grow, update things you need to update. I mean, there's things you can do that'll be low-hanging fruit with that. And if you prosper, you can start to incrementally increase that if you feel like that's what the Lord wants to do, And so that's not something that you're married to forever. It's not. Just like that 20%, when somebody decided that was the way to go here, I don't think there was any intent that was forever, but that was what the church felt led to do there. And so you have to decide what's the church leading, what's God leading you to do as the church now for this time and for this season. And so my suggestion would be, and like I said, you can throw it away as soon as, now if you want, is to, I look at your budget and there's areas that trouble me, to be honest. And I'm not going to point those out because I don't want to make anybody more mad than I've already made you. But there's things that are in trouble, and you're missing out on some opportunities that I think are right there in front of you. And so, when I look at the demographics, and you can go to Oklahoma Baptist, and you can request a demographic study of Fletcher. And so I did this when I came to Lawton. I said, I want a demographic study. I want to know everything I need to know about my community within a 10-mile radius of the church, of the campus. And I got some incredible data. I mean, it's like this thick, and I scoured through every bit of it. And so I know what my target is. I know that a huge part of my population is this age group, and this age group, and this age group. I see one population that's growing, another that's declining. It tells me their socioeconomic numbers of this, all these different groups. And so what I knew immediately was I have to hire a children's minister, because I got a bunch of young families that are coming here because of Fort Sill, because of the new things that are coming in Lawton, and then, because of things that are happening in Elgin. You got a lot of young families that are coming in. And so they're looking for a place to take their kids. And so my dream and my vision was we're going to have the best place in town for kids to be. And so we're working on that. And they were so behind because of because of budget issues. They were so behind. So a lot of it was just updating. And this is going to sound silly and ridiculous to you. My first Sunday, I walked through walking through every area to just kind of see what's going on. Well, I was walking through our children's area, and you see those lights in your balcony? Okay? And I'm not trying to, if you're proud of those, I'm not trying to get on you. What I'm trying to tell you is that was brighter than the lights we had in our whole children's area, in any room or hallway. Now they're bright like that. And we have lights that are actually up to date that you can actually find bulbs for. And I'm telling you, those bulbs we had were running on the grace of God. It was just like God going, okay, I'll help you out, buddy. So just being able to light it up, well, then guess what? We turned on the lights and could see. We realized, whoa, that hadn't been painted in 50 years. And, like we need to take care of that. And so we need to do some paint. And then, oh my gosh, that carpet wasn't brown after all. So we need to take care of that. And so there was just like things like that just low-hanging fruit that we got to change just because we made a budget change. And now, like I said, golly, we started with 12 kids and now over 100. And so, so that's just one guy's looking at your deal, thinking about you, and kind of analyzing your numbers and things like that. And just with a change like that could be huge for you. There's a lot you could do overnight that you wouldn't do otherwise. And then, like I said, you can build that back up. If that's something that's important to you, then you can build it back up as you're able. And I promise you, same thing, 3 years from now, your 10% is going to be way more dollar-wise than what you were doing at 20% right now. And it'll be awesome. And so what I don't recommend is trying to cut it every year. Go like, oh man, that was nice. Let's do it more. I think you got to settle on that number, at some point, and figure out what you want to do. But I think these are exciting times for you, and I think there are things that are, easy wins. And like I said, if you want a full inquiry on what I think of your budget, then you can send that an email and a check for $100, and I'll do it. That's just extra work, but anyway, perhaps I've said too much, but yes, sir. Oh, that's a huge part of it. So let me answer that and if I miss one, we'll come back. Just remind me. So what you do as far as like mission trips with your local church, that's on you 100%, okay? But it's not the same thing as they're doing when you're sending missionaries, because they are going into non-English speaking deals. And so when you invest in our seminaries, when you invest in a missionary through the cooperative program, they are getting highly intensive language training. And so my brother-in-law and sister-in-law are fluent now in the language of Ecuador. It's not quite Spanish, but I don't know if it's Ecuadorian, I don't know. But they are fluent at it. And a major part of that is they have to be at a certain level before they ever put foot over there. And so they do a lot of immersion training. Like it's really spectacular. And even part of the deal is that the beginning stages is when they got to come home in their training time, because they go and train for like 2 years before they hit the mission field. And so when they would come home, I loved going to Mexican restaurants with them because one, they sounded so awesome when they ordered, and they could tell us what was being said when they were talking behind our backs, and so that was great. So the training that they get is elite. In fact, and you may appreciate this, being military, in countries that are not friendly, our missionaries go through an intense, like, special forces like training to know what to do if they're captured, if they're, they walk them through. Like, it's intense. I can't tell you all the things that they walk through, but I can tell you it's incredibly intense. And so when our missionaries hit the mission field, they're elite. Like, they are language elite, they are culture elite. That's why they have such a fast impact. That's why you see so many people saved, because so what they do is way different than here. You know, when you do a mission trip, typically, I don't know if you're talking about international or local, but and I mean local being in the country, you know, you can speak the language primarily. You can at least communicate with the culture and the people there. And so you're doing more of a service thing, like a vacation Bible school, Bible club. You know, you're, you know, that kind of working to build something, tear something down, clean something up. You know, you're helping in those lines. But what they're doing on the mission field is vastly different and a lot more in depth. And they do, nobody trains missionaries better than the IMB. I mean, it's pretty awesome. And the great thing is, like, if you ever wanted to visit their training center, like, you can go do that as Southern Baptist. You can go, and it's, don't get me lying to you, it's not in Nashville where everything else is. I want to say it's in, oh, hold on, let me look. I'm trying to look, and I don't have internet.
While you're looking at that, Mike, Josh, just to give you an idea, our church has been mission-minded for years and years. We've actually had 2 youth from our church that have become missionaries. One, Marcy, she served over in Asia that even her parents did not know where she was at for years because it was an area that they could not share. And then the other one was Steve Roach, and he served,
I know Steve Roach.
and he had, they were down there for years. They lived in a mud hut. They built their own hut out of their own mud bricks and things, so, different things. So we've been very fortunate having some exciting mission, youth to be representing our church and our.
And it might be great to bring him back to tell and talk about that.
They have come back.
But if there's one guy I have confidence that could live in a mud hut, it's Steve Roach. And so, that dude, I love that guy. He was one of the guys when I was in the Baptist Student Union, which that's another thing that your cooperative program helps with. It's the Baptist Student Union, BCM now, it's Baptist Collegiate Ministries. But he was one of the leaders there when I was coming in as a freshman, my first freshman year, out of like 4. And so yeah, I think he was married, you know, on the field and having kids, and I was still in my freshman year. So, one of them. But anyways, does that help?
Yes, sir. And just some context, I'm not trying to play like stuff to jump right.
No, I'm.
I know my wife, we're originally from California. When she was a youth, she went on a mission trip to Mexico, and even now, like it molded and shaped her in a way that we are a lot more grateful, I think.
Yeah.
And my oldest is 3, she's 11. So probably within the next 4 or 5 years, I'm just trying to plan ahead.
Yeah, man. It's all, and the training center is in Richmond. I thought it was in Virginia, but I didn't want to lie to you. But it's in Richmond, and so you can go and visit. And anytime you want to ask, you can call the International Mission Board and ask questions. And you know, their website is great. You can kind of peck around on there, and it's good. And what we did with our missions budget is, our mission strategy is here, there, and everywhere. So we want to do missions at home, meaning in our community. We want to do missions across the country, and then we want to go outside the borders of our country and go overseas. And so we've got some things that we do locally. This next year, we're going to be going to Utah, just outside of Salt Lake City, and we're going to be going to the Bronx, New York, and then we're going to be going to Turkey at some point, and then we're going to be going. I forget where the other one is off the top of my head, but we're announcing all that at our missions banquet here in just this Sunday, actually. And so it'll be an opportunity. I tell my church, I want everybody to get a passport because I want everybody to go on a mission trip that's physically able at some point, in the next 10 years. And so people are getting fired up about that. So there are things that we're going to get to do locally that are powerful to create moments like that. Because that, to me, and I don't know, what was your name? Josh. Those moments with our children and our kids, being able to participate with parents on things like that, God uses that so much to call missionaries out. And if he doesn't use it to call them out to be missionaries, he at least puts it on their heart that it's important, teaches them and changes them things. So in fact, I believe in that so much. My daughter and my wife are going to Ecuador with my brother and sister-in-law. They don't live there anymore, but they do trips, throughout the year. And so I'm sending my daughter for the first time, who's 17. I'm scared to death because she's beautiful and that's dangerous down there. And so, but the Lord, I think, is on it, and because I think there's some things that she can only learn from something like that. And so, so that's where our budget was set aside to help subsidize trips and to help make it's affordable to go on a mission trip, and that kind of thing. Provide some scholarships, to send people on scouting trips, to build relationships. Did I get it? Okay. Great question.
I've got one last thing.
Hey, I'm on your time. Like, if you need to leave, you can just leave, right? But if you want to talk, we can talk. Like,
It's a big deal.
yes, it's a huge.
Big deal, but having you here, how hard was it to convince your wife to nominate you for president?
Yeah. I protect my wife a lot, and I don't share much of anything that happens at that level, and so she may have been the last person to know I was nominated if I didn't tell her. So that process. Well, I'll tell you my process because mine's a little different than everybody else's. So at the end of last summer, and I know we're getting away from your thing, so if you can leave, you want to leave, you just go. You don't have to listen to all this. But at the end of last summer, somebody approached me about, what I think about running for president, and I had never thought about that. And there was a time when, if somebody said I've never thought about it, it was a lie, because it was kind of the thing. It was kind of like becoming the Pope of Southern Baptist. It's like this. It was a huge deal, but that was in peacetime. That's when everything was great, and we were in our heyday, and there wasn't any issues or problems. And man, you're the president of the SBC. Man, you really did something. This is not that time. And because I've been in the fight with, and I don't know how much you guys keep up with this stuff at all, but with the executive committee, with abuse reform and things like that, what we found out was that their Southern Baptist churches had become a hotbed for predators going from church to church. And because churches didn't really know how to handle those things well, these guys were allowed to just move from church to church and hurt kids and families and those kinds of things. And so there was a huge investigative report done by somebody who was not Baptist. He was a reporter from the Houston Chronicle. And he started digging in and finding out all these cases. And he brought out over 700 abuse cases. And the tragedy of that is this, and this is where the fight is at, is you have some people within our umbrella, within Southern Baptist family, that will look at that and go, okay, well, if you do 700 out of 14 million, well, that's not really a problem. That's not a problem, and like you just said, unless it's your kid, unless it's your family, and really, if we went through all this trouble for one, I think it's worth it. And so, but the trouble that it brought was the messengers, people at the annual meeting, okay, decided that we're going to come clean. And they voted to waive attorney-client privilege, which no corporation in the history of modern-day business has ever done that. Because what attorney-client privilege does is it just opens up everything. Come in and look, and it hurts you financially. Because now you're wide open for lawsuits and things like that. And so Southern Baptists have paid millions of dollars because of that decision. And I was one of the guys that fought to make that decision because there were people that were fighting against it. And so I felt like I had to speak up. And so the first time it went for a vote, and really what you have to understand is, so when the messengers vote on something at convention, the job of the EC is to fulfill that vote, to make it happen. Whatever they say, that's what we're supposed to do. That's an oversimplified version of it, but that's the gist of it. Well, there were people saying, we're not going to do that. We can't do that. It'll bankrupt us. It'll, all these end-of-the-world scenarios. There'll be no convention. They tried to, I was a new guy, and in my training, most of that training was scaring me and the other 26 members that I was with, the new people, scaring us about voting for attorney-client privilege. And so the first round, I didn't vote for it because I was scared. And they made it sound like they'll come and take your house, your cars, they're going to get you. And so it freaked me out. And but then I realized there's some political games being played. And it was at the expense of people who've been wounded and hurt. And I didn't think that was Christ-like. And so when I changed my mind, what I said was, neither one of these roads end well. But one of them is repentance. In my heart and my mind, one of them is repentance, and the other one is not. And so if we're going to have any chance, it's with God on our side. And I didn't believe God would put his hand on us if we stayed stubborn and stiff-necked and kept doing what we were doing. And so I rallied folks, and I'm not the reason why it changed, but I have some influence, I think. And but we changed course and changed the vote. It got voted down twice, and then the third time we got it through. And so when we did that, it opened up a big can of worms. And so the report came out. You can find the report online. It's just the Sex Abuse Task Force report, or Guidepost Solutions report on sex abuse for the Southern Baptist Convention. And it's awful to read through. It's gross. But I think, it was necessary. And so the people that hate me for doing that and being a part of that are the guys that are killing me online and that kind of stuff right now. So I found out yesterday that I'm effeminate. Hi. I'm effeminate, I'm woke, and I'm a liberal. That's what I am right now. And so, I guess I'm woke because I'm brown. That's kind of appears to be the definition right now. And because I speak up for victims. And the reason why they call me effeminate is because whenever I helped present something at the annual meeting regarding sex abuse, I got emotional talking about it. And then the next year, I wrote a resolution. It was Resolution 4, and it was on behalf of Native American families that their families had been abused through boarding schools, government boarding schools. And it was the first ever Southern Baptist resolution in favor of Native Americans. And so it's historical, and so I got a little choked up with that. And that's the picture you've seen on the Law and Constitution. If you saw that, is I'm holding up my ballot for that vote, and somebody captured that. And so because of that, I'm effeminate. And I'm like, I'll show you effeminate. You come on my house. No, that's funny how it works. So going back to the story. So when I got approached about it, I just, there's no way. And I started to pray about it. Went to my wife, had her pray about it. And so this is a season of about 3 months where I go myself, my wife, went to my kids. Next year will be my daughter's senior year, or one of my daughter's senior year. And then when we got a piece as a family, I went to my staff and just said, this is going to change your life a lot. If, just me running is going to change your life, because it puts a target on my chest and our church, and it's ultimately going to get you. The law amendment, some people are interpreting it to believe that if you have a female serving on your staff in any ministry position, that you wouldn't be considered in friendly cooperation with the Southern Baptist Convention. And which I don't believe that for a second. But I don't know that that's the intention of the actual amendment, but it's being interpreted that way by some folks. And so for us in Lawton, that affects us. My children's minister is female. And we're not woke, we're not liberal. I mean, good night, listen to a sermon that I preach. I'm not any of that, and I'm certainly not effeminate, and I can't wait to meet that guy. He's about as tall as one of my legs. And so, I'm sorry, scratch that off the record. But anyway, so went through that with my staff. They got a piece about it. Then I went to my deacons and said, here's where we're at. We had a great meeting. They asked lots of questions, and I said, I was truthful. Said, here's what this is going to mean, and this is an ugly season right now, unfortunately, and so people are going to say what they say and do what they do, and so we took a few weeks to pray through that, and then we reconvened, and they affirmed me 100% to go after it and do it. And then I took it to my church. And so at our regular, we call our business meetings family celebrations. And so at our family celebration, the church affirmed it. In fact, the church actually was the ones announcing, my church announced my nomination. They're not making the announcement, but they announced that I was running. And so as I was praying through that, once I got a clear peace, I began to pray about a nominator. You have to have a nominator. And I didn't feel comfortable asking somebody, hey, would you nominate me? I wanted God to put it on somebody's heart to nominate, and not the person that I talked to. He was in a position that he couldn't. And so this guy called me about something else that had happened in Southern Baptist life, and it turns out that he'd been wanting to nominate me, but he didn't want to do that to my family. And so I shared my heart with him about where I was at, and he said, I'm in. And he's great. His name is Victor Kayarisabon, and don't ask me how to spell that. But he's an Asian guy, pastor in California, in Anaheim, and he's an amazing man of God. And whether I win or not, I guarantee it'll be the best nomination speech you've ever heard in your life. And it may involve a WWE championship belt, because he's a big fan. But well, so there's two guys that I know personally that have served as presidents of the convention. One is Steve Gaines, who is the pastor at Bellevue Baptist Church in Memphis, where Adrian Rogers was the pastor. He followed Adrian Rogers, which, golly, can you imagine? But he's done a great job doing it, and an incredible man of God. So I asked him, and the first thing he told me, and it was the answer to the question I was going to ask him, was, you know what, in my 2 years of being the president, because it's a 2-year term, really a 1-year term, but they usually give you the second, run typically unopposed. He said, in my 2 years of being president, I did not miss a Sunday at my church. And I committed that I wasn't going to do that. And then Tom Elliff is the other. He was the president in 98, 99, I think. And he told me that too. He said, I didn't miss a Sunday. He goes, they're going to try to make you miss, but you don't have to. You're the president. And so he said, and that, and he said, Steve and I didn't do that. And so he said, you can be gone as much as you want or as little as you want. That's up to you. And so I've determined that I'm not going to miss a Sunday unless they're, right now we're in the middle of a federal investigation. And so if they have some kind of litigation thing on a Sunday, then I would have to. There wouldn't be no way around that. But I'm not going to use that Sunday to go preach in other churches and do those kind of things. I can do it before June. No, I could do that if I wanted to. My church would love it. So. But yeah, that's how I got there. What else? I know the hour is getting late, but man, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. And I've had a ball with you, and I hope it helps you a little bit as you pray through it and do what you need to do. And after you dismiss, I'll hang out if some of you have some more questions or whatever. I feel bad keeping you hostage, and so, all right, love you, mean it, bye.
Yes, thank you so much. I feel encouraged. I feel educated. Anybody else?
Absolutely.
Sharon, we appreciate you sticking around. I think it's Lord of the Flies in the nursery, though. So
Oh, yeah.
that's a word of prayer. Father,
think that.
no, it's good. Father, thank you for Pastor Keebone. Pray your discernment, your wisdom, your comfort, your protection, your intimacy, your leadership, your blessing over his bride and the babies. Thank you, God, for just a couple of powerful passages that whispered in my heart tonight. Thank you for every question, every response. Thank you, God, for Southern Baptist Convention. Thank you, God, for the co-author of the program. And thank you, God,